Good morning. I am Steve Weber. Welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. And it has been a few weeks since I've been here for a live show. I've been doing some side behind the scene projects and some other activities that have taken most of my energy. So I just said, hey, we'll let the show take a little bit of a breather, a little bit of space. And anyway, here we are today. Though we got a good show lined up. I have a guest. Dr. Pamela Giroli, Giroli. My apologies, Dr. Pamela Giroli, and she's going to join us. And she's going to talk about a divine blueprint that she had as she did her spiritual awakening and a download from source energy. And so it's going to be a fascinating, fun conversation that we're going to have, and what we'll talk about what the divine matrix is and how it's helping people in their spiritual awakening. Now, interestingly, and I don't want to say too much about our guest, because I'm going to do a monologue. I have a monologue coming up here, but we have Pamela and I have a lot of coincidences and connections in our lives, and so it's just going to be a fun, enjoyable conversation. Her awakening started in the 90s. Mine started around 2010, so I'm a little bit newer to the party than she is. But it's really, as I went through the divine matrix, I really did feel a lot of connection and a lot of things that she discovered and what are outlined in the matrix that in some ways I kind of figured out on my own, not in the same exact form. And not as eloquent as she's going to talk about, but it's very interesting. So that's going to come up. Alrighty. So today is Tuesday, October 26th, and it's show number 221. Yeah, 221. That's not too bad. So here we are. We're going to go. So no Brandon Schaefer. I did talk to Brandon this morning, and he wasn't available, but we'll have him back as we get back into a more regular routine. And probably what my new routine is going to be. I'm not officially announcing this. I'm just teasing this a little bit. Is we're probably going to do like 2 shows a week, Amy. I did 5 shows a week. That's way too. I don't have the energy to be able to keep that up. That's a full-time job just doing that. So other projects are coming in. American Gumption is, the original vision of American Gumption is becoming more fulfilled. And so we'll probably end up doing the show about twice a week. And that's sort of what I'm aiming at. But I'll announce that officially as we get going. Alrighty, so today's monologue, and I don't even have a monologue banner, so I'll just announce it. It's one man show, and it's direct inspiration from Pamela, who's coming up, because she did a one woman show. Here's the difference: she actually did her one woman show. I've always just talked about doing my one man show, but I think it's relevant to say that. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit of the story of the one man show. So 12 years ago, I envisioned creating a one-man show, and I'm not sure exactly when it started. It might have happened, like the vision of it might have started a year or two earlier than that. But when I was launching the Speaking Gump website 2.0 back in 2009, 2010 timeframe, basically I announced what I could do. And so obviously I was a speaker, I was an entertainer, I could do some emceeing, those kinds of things. But I also said that I did a one-man show, and I had like kind of an outline of it, and it was listed on my website. And it was a vision that I had. And, about a year or two after that, there was a gentleman who coached me, and he asked about the one-man show. He goes, "Have you ever done the one-man show?" And I said, "No, I haven't. It's just sort of one of those things I feel like I'm destined to do." And he became very indignant, and he said, "You have to remove that. You can't promote and advertise something like you do that when you haven't ever done it." And he was very very indignant about it, and kind of slapped me down for having it up there. So anyway, now here's an alternate philosophy that this is funny because I've been, trying to figure out exactly how to do my business over the last, 10, 15 years, ever since the, being Gump for Bubba Gump ended around 2011, early 2011, and the transition into being Speaking Gump, that was all taking place in 2007, 8, 9, 10, that time frame. But there was an alternate philosophy that I learned. It said, hey, create as you go along. Don't spend a lot of time creating without knowing if there's a demand. And, just create it, say that you do it. And then if there's interest, just go do it. Create it then. And so, here, I guess that's what I was doing. I was saying, hey, I'm going to do this show. And, it never energetically took off. But it's lingered. And the reason why here we are talking about it 10, 12 years later, really, is that it's still lingering. It's still lingering. And when I saw Pamela's, one woman show, I took some inspiration from it, and it reminded me of what I thought I was going to do. So anyway, and in some ways, I'm going to say that I have created the one-man show, because here the American Gumption Morning Show is essentially just me, but it also has guests, and our guest is coming up today, and I've made the guest be the star of this show. Now I'm the common denominator through, show after show after show. But, having the guest and having a conversation has been what this show has really been all about and what it's become. But in some ways, it's my own, one-person show. And then if you think about my speaking career, I've done hundreds of keynote presentations over the last decade. And you stand up in front of an audience and you talk for 45 to 60 minutes, 75 minutes, and you just tell a story. And in some ways, that is a one-person show or a one-man show. And I've got, you develop the message, or and you just tell it evolves and it goes along. And so it's a form of that. Now, the original vision I had for the one-man show back then is I would be Gump sitting on the bench, and I would be using the persona of the character, telling some kind of a story, just like a la Forrest Gump sat on the bench and did it. There was always the issue of, like, I'm not, the intellectual property doesn't belong to me. I've been an impersonator. I did this for a long time. So, that never really felt like I wanted to push it too hard, because, it was always kind of a questionable thing. I obviously can't promote it as being Forrest Gump, but, somehow I could promote it and do it in a way that was unique to me. So, recently, I obtained the domain Bench Gumption, benchgumption.com. And my vision for that is that I could do little snippets where I basically sit on the bench and I stream the character, or I, take inspiration from the character and I talk about something, but kind of like in little snippet form. That's sort of the vision with Bench Gumption. And that's sort of an evolution of what maybe the one-man show might have been, or could have been, or we'll see. It could still be part of it. So why am I sharing all this? And I've sort of teased it. Dr. Pamela Girali has done her own one-woman show. She doesn't sit on the bench a la Forrest Gump, but she metaphorically does exactly that. She had a little set, and she came in and she would share chapters of her life, chapters of her spiritual awakening. She would move off the stage, change characters and costumes, and return to explain the new chapter. And it went from her, from her childhood to church teachings, to first marriage, to first career, spiritual awakening, and then how the divine blueprint came to be, and then to today. And I think she's, from what I could tell from the show that I watched, it sounds like she probably performed the show 20 or 30 times. I don't know, maybe more than that. But the themes that she discussed were very familiar to me. Church teachings, rules, fear, God being this benevolent dictator who was like keeping track of everything that we did, society's expectations, trying to fit in and do what we're supposed to do. And this was all different little chapters of her life. And then the trials and tribulations of just living life and relationships. and then finally searching, discovery, awakening, where, these like, my words, not hers, but one day you wake up and you go, oh my gosh, everything that I thought I believed, I don't know whether I believe. I don't know whether it's the truth. All these things that I was told were true, are they really true? And do they really serve me to continue to believe them? Or is there something else that I should follow? And it really becomes getting in touch with your inner knowing, with your inner self, with that higher wisdom, and basically discovering your own truth for yourself, and then ultimately letting go of the disguises that we wear. And Forrest Gump was certainly a disguise that I wore it proudly, but ultimately, we're shedding that. And yet there's still a piece of me that feels like it's appropriate to use at some point. So anyway, that's mostly what I want to say. So I'm going to wrap up by saying, is it okay for us to say we're going to do something, or say that we can do something when we haven't done it before? And I'm thinking back to the gentleman who admonished me for having that listed as this is something I do. And so it's very, is it okay to do that? And needless to say, I think you probably figured this out. He didn't resonate with me. His philosophy and his approach just was like, I'm not sure I'm buying into this. And actually, now that I think about it, that was part of my own personal growth, where I went, oh my gosh, I have different gurus coming into my life, different people training me, or different people I'm asking for help. And I don't have to accept everything that everybody says. I can basically say, you know what, that's your truth, but that's not my own truth. And that was really what that's what I took away from that. So even though I didn't resonate with what his approach, I learned from it, and I got something very valuable. Here it is 10 years later, and I'm talking about it because it was a meaningful learning lesson for me. So the one-man show for me is still an idea that resonates. I'm still thinking how it might be. It could be. And, I think the biggest challenge I've had is like, well, what exactly is the conversation that I would have? And that feels like it's more clear today what that could be. Whereas back then, 10 years ago, I really didn't have any idea what. I just thought, hey, this is a pretty cool idea. Let's just do this. But I wasn't even sure what it was. And here's what I do know, and here's what I reflected on this morning. When I created my original vision 12 years ago, I listed, those different things that I did. And I didn't do all of those things. And I didn't, even being a speaker, I didn't have that figured out. And I listed that there. And it took me several years to get that all straightened out, what Gumption was all about and what my message was. So I was in the process of going through that, my metamorphosis from being Forrest Gump, the entertainer for Bubba Gump, to being Steve Weber, speaker, the message of Gumption, life lessons from the movie. All of that took multiple years to do. The one-man show was an idea that I had, and it's still sitting there, and it feels like it's still going to come alive someday. And so I had this rough idea. Here's the bottom line. I had a rough idea of what I wanted to create 10 or 12 years ago, and most of it's been created. The one-man show part hasn't been created, but that's okay. I forgive myself, and maybe that still is going to come to be, or maybe it's not meant to be, and that would be okay too. So anyway, there are no coincidences. We are all connected, and so I'm going to go ahead and ask Dr. Pamela to join us. Hello there.
Hi, good morning, Steve. It is just delightful to be with you today.
Oh, thank you for joining us. We talked briefly before we went live, and had a little bit of a internet issue. Everything seems to be going real well now, so we'll just keep our fingers crossed that everything's going to work out and it's all going to be the way it's supposed to be. So anyway, so here are the two rules that I have when I have a first-time guest come and join the show. But I have a question for you. Are you a rule follower, or are you a rule breaker by generally speaking?
Well, I've always tried to be little Miss Goody Two Shoes when I was younger, but I like to push the envelope. So who knows what's going to happen today?
All right. Well. Here the rules are pretty simple. The rule number one is I get to read a bio that tells people who you are.
Okay,
And
that's
so
good.
that's not something that you'll, I hope, find a disagree. And then I have a song that I play, and it's called the First Time Guest Welcoming Theme Song. And so, but here's the deal, Pamela. If we have you back a second time, it's not allowed to be played.
No song. Okay.
It's only one. So those are the two rules. So that's easy. That's easy stuff. So here's the here's who you are. And this I gleaned from your website. So Dr. Pamela Girali is a visionary and pioneer in spiritual growth and transformation. She is an author, intuitive healer, and remind me to talk about intuitive healer from your one-woman show, because that's an interesting piece. Speaker. So she's an author, an intuitive healer, speaker, performer, and mentor. The blueprint for the human spirit. The blueprint for the human spirit. And let me change the banner because there we go. It says divine blueprint. There we go. The blueprint for the human spirit is Pamela's passion and purpose. And I love how you said, hey, once you find your purpose, life is easier. And, that is really what we're going to talk about today. It is an inspired guide for self-discovery and conscious, compassionate living. It is an inspired guide for self-discovery and conscious, compassionate living. It offers insights into the human experience. I love that. Human experience. That's what this is all about. We're trying to all figure this out. It is designed to integrate all aspects of life into a synergistic whole. Synergistic whole. These are good words. These are human experience. Synergistic whole. I love this. We're talking my language. It combines ancient teachings with new science, Eastern philosophy, and Western psychology, and is relevant for individuals with all belief systems from all walks of life. Pamela was originally trained as an RN, but after her own personal awakening, she returned to school and obtained a doctorate in holistic health sciences. Probably never imagined that, did you?
No, I didn't.
There you go. All right. So Dr. Pamela, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. I am grateful that you're here. Let's play that song, and then it's all about us just having a conversation. How's that sound?
Excellent.
All righty. Here we go. I think, let's see. It's been a while. Here we go. All righty. And we have Debbie Garcia, the Spirituality Gone Wild founder, checking in, and she already says how wonderful you are. So thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie. Yes. Well, that music was awesome. My husband's great-grandfather came from Palermo, Italy in 1906 with his family, like 13 or I don't know how many children. They were persecuted because they were not Catholic. They were Christian in Italy. And they came here, and he was a professor of music. He became a band director at the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana and played with John Philip Sousa, played the cornet.
Wow.
Yes. Wow. Is that amazing?
Yeah. And that particular song is of that same era that you're your grandparents would have come here, because that was written, I believe, that's the Washington Post March, and it was written in 1889, a commissioned piece when the Washington Post started as a newspaper.
That's
and they wanted
amazing.
some fanfare for it. And so that was but of course, John Philip Sousa had already written many marches and bands. And
Yes.
it's so funny when you listen to them, they all sound almost identical in some ways.
Yes.
But they're
It's
fun.
very cool.
I was in the high school marching band, so I played some John Philip Sousa songs over there. So. Well, good. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
I just have a couple more remarks that I'll make, and then I'm really going to turn it over to you, and we'll just follow along however this conversation goes. But I feel like what we want to talk about today is the divine blueprint, for sure. We'll talk a little bit about the one woman show, and then your spiritual awakening, just like the process, because for me, one of the fascinating things and themes that run through is that I just love those aha moments when people go, oh my gosh, so we'll touch on all of those three things. And I wanted to say, as I looked over your website, your videos, reading about the divine blueprint, I realized that our journeys are similar. Our conclusions are very similar. The stories and lessons are uniquely our own, and that's okay. Yours is obviously the divine blueprint, and the matrices. We'll talk about that, and then and mine's Gumption. But Gumption is taking personal responsibility for your life, your thoughts, actions, and interactions with others. So it's similar in what you want people to do with their life. Take control of it. So with that said, where do you think we should begin? Where would you like to start?
Well, I'd like to just mention my background just a little bit. I grew up in Pennsylvania, just like you did, and in a very small town, fundamental Christian background, a very conservative home and church and community. And it was very limiting. And from my show, I'm sure you saw that I wore long dresses and white stockings, and we didn't cut our hair. We couldn't wear makeup or jewelry or anything like that, because those were considered sins. And so there were a lot of rules, and it was very difficult for me, but I tried my best to be good enough because I was so fearful. And I think every time I went to church, I was beat up with religion because we were told that we were unworthy. Everybody talked about original sin, and nobody ever talked about our original divinity.
Yeah.
And after I left home, went to college and pursued a really amazing career in nursing, and then I got a master's in public health and worked with mostly nonprofit health organizations, including the American Cancer Society and the Oncology Nursing Society. I was at Fox Chase Cancer Center for 4 years in Philadelphia. And I also was the program director for Prevent Blindness America. So I had amazing leadership opportunities, and my whole life was dedicated to helping others in a positive way. And I loved what I did. I was very good at program planning and organizing. And eventually I was given the opportunity to go to the Center for Creative Leadership. And while I was there, I did journaling and visioning and worked with change partners. We had an artist and a social worker who worked with us. And I had a new vision. I saw myself in a different way. We had to do all these self-assessments, and I had never really looked inside. And that's not an easy thing to do. I don't know about you if you've done that or not, but it is a little disconcerting. And when I went back to work after that amazing leadership experience, I realized that my job was no longer compatible with my new vision. So I walked away and never earned any more since then, basically. But I became a spiritual seeker. And that was the pivotal moment. And you spoke about pivotal moments, and I'm sure you've had them too, but that was mine. And I went on a different path. I went from being, career oriented to being spiritually oriented. And became a seeker. So I was voracious. I read every book I could read that was written by the masters. I attended all kinds of workshops, went to all these holistic expos, and I was seeking and seeking. But there was a part of me that was so concerned that I would be led down the wrong path because I was raised with fear. And I was so concerned that somebody would lead me astray, and I didn't trust what I read. I tried all those spiritual practices. I was open to everything, and it was all floating around out here, but I didn't trust it. So eventually I was awakened in the middle of the night, and information started flowing in. I laid there for about an hour and a half. Yes, it was amazing.
We'll pause just for a second.
Yes.
Back up on that moment when you said, everything I had been trained to do up until this point, you're working as an RN and you had a master's degree and you were, in that very much into, medicine, serving of others. And then you went to a retreat, and almost instantly, like at that moment, you went, it's like it. And I guess what always is interesting to me is that there's like there is that moment when there's like suddenly you see things differently and you can't go back, and yet there was like all these things that have like kind of built up to it, and then but there's like it's like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and there is that moment, but it's like something that had been building up. Was that your experience?
Exactly. And I think that my very fundamental background was perfect for this. I always thought, I ended up in the wrong, the stork took me to the wrong home or something like that. But I felt as if I hadn't had that extreme, that I wouldn't have walked away and my life was totally devoid of anything spiritual, except for the fact I love to sing. And so I went to church to sing, and I had a couple friends who were choir directors. So I would go to church and I would sing. And as soon as the minister got on the platform, I shut down. I never heard a word, which is really interesting. And then years later, everything came back full circle with a whole new understanding. But you're absolutely right. There is a moment when you awaken to something different, when your whole awareness shifts and it's a new door opens and you walk through, and the sky's the limit.
So at that point, you've had this like awakening, and then what started happening in the middle of the night when you would wake up and you had started receiving information, and so pick up the story from there.
Sure. I would be awakened. It was always about 3:30 in the morning, and I would just lay there in an open state and for about an hour and a half, and this information would flow in, and it came in words, concepts, ideas, and it came with shapes. And I didn't even know what sacred geometry was, but there was these beautiful shapes. And so after about an hour and a half, I would get up and go to my office and enter everything into my computer and draw the little designs. And every day it happened 3 to 4 days a week for 6 months. And my husband and I would take our morning walk, and I would explain to him exactly what I received that morning, and he would be very patient and listened as we walked along. And of course, I presented it in bits and pieces, and he didn't see my little charts emerging and evolving. And one day, after a few years later, I did a workshop and kind of built the blueprint in front of people, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, I get it. It's like all the bits and pieces that I had shared with him." But this was how it evolved. And one step at a time, it emerged from a simple mind, body, spirit triangle into this beautiful, almost like a three-dimensional tetrahedron in spheres that kept growing and growing. And then with it was this matrix. And I didn't understand the matrix because it was like a chart, a flow chart, and there was multiple levels and multiple concepts that all fit into these boxes. And it started very small, but finally emerged to the point where there was like 25 boxes in this beautiful matrix. And the interesting thing about that is this particular spiritual model is not hierarchical. It is more fractile. It builds on each other, and every element contains, common units, but it also is synergistic because every row and every column merges together to create something bigger and better. It is just absolutely amazing.
I have some, from your download and from your overview of it, there are some of those graphics and matrices, and so
Sure.
maybe we could just sort of show them. It's
Sure.
not. I don't think it's going to be. It's clear enough that we can really explain it, but I just we'll kind of give the big picture view of it and talk a little bit about it. So let's go ahead and try this. See if I can just share the screen, and hopefully everything goes good. Here we go.
Okay, this shows how the 5 dimensions of life, the physical, mental, emotional, intuitive, all merge together to become the spiritual aspect of life. The spiritual is like the sum total of all of it. So it's the body, mind, heart, gut, if you want to call it that, and the soul. Those are the 5 dimensions in the blueprint.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's great. And that was really one of the very first things that came through. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
it was. Mm-hmm.
All right. So let's, and then the spheres of existence.
Spheres of existence. Okay. Now they are fields of existence because they're become a little more amorphous, but it starts with the quantum, which is the energetic aspect of everything. And the personal is how we focus inside on ourselves. Social is how we expand our perspective to serve others and reach out and being part of the whole or the global. And then the eternal is our essence. This is really who and what we are, the eternal aspect of life.
Yeah, interesting that I became fascinated with quantum physics. It was turned out I was fascinated with it for many, many years, but in the last, during my last 10 years, during the awakening, I really dug into it. But I had read about Einstein, 30 years ago and was interested in his life. So the whole quantum thing, how our thoughts become things is so important. Yes. But then take it all the way to the external or the global, are we here to, serve others beyond just our own needs, but knowing that our own needs begin with that, that quantum level is
exactly
fascinating.
Yes.
All righty. And then what is the circle of consciousness, and how did, and in this order that I'm presenting them, are these kind of the way it came to you also, or?
Well, the circle of consciousness is an aspect of the blueprint where all the columns kind of merge together. So the physical column is the circle of life, and it ends with divine immortality. Mm-hmm. The circle of wisdom is the mental aspect of life. And of course, in the essence of our being is omniscient. And the circle of life, the emotional component of life, we have unconditional love and good. Then there's the circle of power, the intuitive, and that's all about omnipotence. So, and in the circle of light or the spiritual, it's about omnipresence. So these divine qualities or superpowers that we have that we are mostly unaware of are actually a part of the essence of our being. That is the truth of who we are. This is our original divinity. And the circles actually are the merging of the physical of the self, how we focus inward, and how we give and take with others and the universe. And those synergistically come together and actually create what I call the circle of abundance. So there's a lot of different things that I've learned from the blueprint, but the circle of consciousness is like the sum total of all of that put together. And if I had some graphic skills, I would show some of those things in amazing ways. I can see them and sense them, but I haven't been able to figure out how to put it all together.
It's what I love about the work you're doing and what you've done is that it came in pieces. So it wasn't like this all just came to you instantaneously, because there's a complexity to it that you had to first understand on a basic level. And it was almost as if like you were like somehow shown the big picture first, and then you started to go into the detail. And as you got into the detail, the divine or the understanding of it became clear.
Exactly.
Did I understand that correctly?
Exactly. Yes. And one thing I want to point out, this is my old website. And my new website is drpamelagirali.com. So I recognize the images that you had as having come from my old website, but that's okay. But it's drpamelagirali.com. That's more current information. It's just up, and we're in the process of trying to funnel anybody that goes to pamelagirali.com to drpamelagirali.com. So there's more current and up-to-date information available on that website. So I'll let you fix that.
Yeah, I'm fixing that banner right now. Let's see.
There we go. Yes, thank you.
Okay,
thank
good.
you. So those images are more first generation. There's more information on drpamelagirali.com. So that are a little more tight and
version 2.0.
Version 2, yes, I know, yes. So the blueprint did just evolve and evolve and evolve. But what was so important about that is that every time new ideas would come to me, I would have opportunities to integrate them, to learn what that meant, and to integrate it into my way of being. And so every time I learned something new, and every time I increased my awareness, then the blueprint took another leap as well. So it evolved in harmony with my personal growth. So that's why I feel like I can share it and why it's my passion, because it made such a difference in my life and how it then became my purpose. One day I was kind of feeling a little smug about having nailed my higher purpose. So I asked my husband if he knew what his reason for being was. And you have to understand that he's retired, and at that time he was golfing a lot, and he was basically, chasing a little white ball around. So I said, do you know what your higher purpose is? And he said, yes, I am here to support you so you can achieve your higher purpose.
Oh, wow. Wow. That's divine.
I am so blessed.
That's divine.
I am so blessed. It is.
Yeah. That's a good, we're going to deviate just a little bit off of that. There's so much talk about the divine feminine these days, and with good reason. The feminine has been held back, and society created a patriarchal way of being, and yet when the divine feminine is talked about, I really think that the conversation needs to be broader, and it needs to be, let's not be competing with each other anymore. Let's go ahead and figure out what does the divine masculine and what does the divine feminine look like, and what's that divine association together supposed to be. So
exactly. Well, I think it is all about bringing it all together, and not just, the feminine is usually considered to be more emotional. And I will say that there was a moment in time when my awareness took a huge leap and I had shifted from being more mental and intellectual about the blueprint. I mean, it was an awesome intellectual exercise, and I observed this and I wrote about it and all that stuff. But there was a moment another pivotal moment in my life when I made a shift. And I had this beautiful blueprint. The eternal realm was just kind of starting to emerge, but there were basically 15 primary boxes in the matrix with the self, social, and global realms in the 5 dimensions. And this one morning, this was back in 2001, I was sitting on the lanai before church, meditating, and very quickly went into a whole other realm of being. And I experienced 15 past lives, a dramatic event in 15 past lives in an hour and a half.
Wow.
And they were men, women, and children from all walks of life. And they spanned the ages from ancient Mayan times to more early 1900s. And each one of them experienced something so profound that I was totally blown away. I went to church that morning and my friend said, "What happened to you?" Because and I told her, and she said, "Go home and write about it." And so I did. I wrote the stories of the people that I experienced. And actually, when I came to after that meditative experience, I ran into my office and wrote a couple lines about each one in my journal. And when I looked down and counted them, there were 15 I hadn't known. And I wrote them down in not the order I experienced them, but in order of the blueprint. There was one person for each of the cells in the matrix. And each one of them reflected a core shift in consciousness that I had become aware of, that I had been working on, that I had integrated into my way of being. And as I wrote about it and analyzed that information, I realized that all the people in the self level were victims. All the people in the social realm tried hard and failed. They were like ego effort. All the people in the global realm got it. Wow. They lived consciously and compassionately. And someday I'm going to write their stories. But and each one of them also reflected an aspect of my own life. So it wasn't as if they were foreign to me. I mean, I was experiencing them in a different way. And later that week, I went to visit a friend with this document. I had this huge document in my chart that showed all the archetypes. I call them archetypes because that's what they are. And I told her about my experience. She says, "Well, would you like to do a regression?" I'm like, I have all these people. I'm never going to figure them out, and I said, "Why not?" So she guided me back in time, and I was a child at the feet of Jesus when he said, "Let the children come to me, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." Yeah. And in that moment, I knew what that meant. I mean, I knew that meant that we are children. Children are absolutely open and loving and innocent. And they are joyful and playful and curious. And that is the kingdom of heaven. That is what it means. And that one additional archetype of the beloved child of God became the archetype for the eternal realm of being. And that, the experience of the beloved child of God and the 15 archetypes shifted me out of an intellectual approach to the blueprint until it became an absolute part of me. Mm. I experienced it. I experienced the blueprint so profoundly that I feel like it gave me greater understanding and greater passion so that I could share it and help other people.
I'm going to share the archetype matrix right now, and you could maybe explain that just a little bit.
Yes. Okay.
I completely missed that that, and maybe it wasn't there on the website, but I completely missed the idea that the archetypes were your own experiences. Now, but here's the question. Did you first originally create the archetypes and then you had that experience of the past lives afterwards and realized that they were coincidentally one and the same?
No, it was the meditation where they emerged.
Okay.
Now, I had ideas about a child, like in the blueprint, in the physical, there's the child and the parent, and then the steward of the earth. And then there's this in the mental, the student and the teacher and the creator of new knowledge and technology. I mean, I had that idea, but
so pieces were all there, but they weren't assembled in this final.
And they weren't experiential.
Gotcha. Well, let's go ahead and put let's put it up there.
Yes.
And so again, it's going to be a little bit difficult for someone to see, but maybe talk about the 3 rows and then the 5 columns.
Yes.
Just in general, so that, because it's too much detail, otherwise people can't see it, but just explain what we're looking at.
Yes. So in the personal field, I mentioned before that they were all victims. Like the oppressed slave. And he was a slave, a typical Black slave in the colonial era. Yeah. And the old master had died, and the new master was even more nasty. And he didn't realize that just across the street was freedom. And he was never able to stand up for himself. Well, in my life, I realized that, I always felt like my parents had us doing so much. We worked because we grew up in the country and we were pretty self-sufficient. And so we worked. I felt a little bit like a slave at times, because I would rather play. And but then as I grew older, I realized that I became my own master and imposed my own very harsh, high standards on myself. And so I had to learn about, how to be kind to myself and how to stand up. And if I felt like I was suppressed in any way, so that's one example of the victims. They were all victims, and each one of them represented a different aspect of being. Like in the physical, we have to learn how to take good care of ourselves first. If we don't take care of ourselves and if we aren't responsible for our own well-being, then we will never be able to care for others and, live purposefully. And we want to open our hearts and minds. The deaf and dumb child. I was told all my life, little girls are to be seen and not heard. So these things were just so relevant. Now, in the social field,
the middle row,
these individuals, these past lives and archetypes, tried hard and failed. And I'll talk about the one in the spiritual realm. He was a decadent glutton from ancient Rome, and his family was very, very wealthy, and he inherited everything. He had opportunity. I mean, he looked like Jabba the Hutt. I mean, he was just an awful, ugly person. And he had the opportunity to do something meaningful with his life, to live a purposeful life. And he chose not to. He wasted his life. And his servants just came and brought him food, and he would sit out where he could see the people wandering by, and they were starving, hungry, begging for food, and he would just throw scraps at them. It was, really nasty. And he basically ate himself out of house and home. He became like one of the wandering because he did not live purposefully. He did not share and embrace something that would serve others. So that was a lesson to me. So the other thing I want to point out, Ed, is if you see how it flows from victimhood to where things happen to us beyond our control, to in the social field where we take charge and things happen by me. I'm going to make this happen. And certainly I did a lot of that in my career. I made a lot of things happen. Push, push, push. In fact, I was often viewed as a bulldozer because I just pushed. And then in the global field, we finally learn how to go with the flow and allow spirit to work with us and through us so that we can live more consciously. See, in the personal realm, it's about being authentic and knowing who you are and understanding the truth of your being, essence. In the social realm, it's about discovering and embracing our purpose. We're here for a reason. We're all part of this ongoing creation story. We're co-creators and we continue that. And in the global field, this is where we live consciously and ultimately leave a legacy of love for future generations. And in this one, I think I'll talk about the American Indian shaman because I've run into him a number of times in meditations. And in fact, my sister once for my birthday had an intuitive artist draw a picture of a spirit guide, and it was him. His name is Tanate, and he's beautiful. He had green eyes. I can't have green eyes. And, but this American shaman gave me his medicine bag and all the powers in it in a meditation. He guided me on a journey once. I was sucked through a wormhole 1,000 years, and I was sitting and cross-legged at a fire, and this shaman tapped me on the shoulder, and he motioned, time to go. And we went on a journey up a mountain. Well, you know what mountains mean in symbolism of mountains is a higher awareness. You know, and when you reach the peak, then you meet God. Well, we went on this journey up the mountain. We had to stop and catch our breath, and then we kept going, and we'd stop, and then we go further. And when we got close to the peak of the mountain, we merged into one. And of course, that is the moment where we realize that we're no longer separate, but we are one with all that is. And I also realized that from that, our spirit guides or whomever that we feel that are kind of out there guiding us are actually a part of us, which is a whole new way of looking at that. And then finally, I reached the peak and I was in the presence of God. I was so overwhelmed. It was so light and so bright and so powerful. Was like Moses looking at the burning bush or coming down from the mountain. I mean, I couldn't breathe. It was just so amazing. But that shaman, in this particular instance, he knew what was going to happen to his people. He healed them and he guided them. And he, of course, the American Indians and other indigenous cultures make decisions only after they consider the impact for at least 7 generations in the future. And one of the key things that he promoted was to respect and sustain Earth for future generations. But I mean, what powerful messages that I received. Each one of these people were so amazing. And they're similar, you know, like the scholar and orator in the social field. It was like a Galileo type person, the martyred saint in the global field under the spiritual realm. She was like Joan of Arc, you know, so, and there were a number of these people that I had experienced in the past in meditations. So powerful stories. And someday I'm going to write all about them. I think this would make an amazing movie.
Yeah. And I see at the very bottom, the beloved child of God crosses the entire spectrum.
Yes. Yes. Oneness.
Beautiful. Well, that is, you know,
wow.
I hope that we had a chance to go through that. Of course, there's more there, and people can go to your a website, and I recommend they go to Dr. Pamela Girelli. So drPamelaGirelli.com. That's her new website. And I was looking at the old website, but that's okay.
That's okay.
I got that's what we talked about. So it's even going to get better after this. But
yes.
Who is it, Pamela? Who is it that would really benefit from this? Who are your clients? Who are the people that you're serving at this moment in time?
Yes, I believe anybody who is a seeker can benefit to a great degree. And I would like to share another experience that I had, because I have a new book out. May I share it? The Dance of Ego and Essence, Confessions of a Divine Diva. And this experience was also very life-changing. I had been sick. I had viral thyroiditis, and I was down for about 6 months and wasn't able to do anything. I had no energy. And when I got better, I asked the higher powers that be, what should I do first? Because I had a lot of incomplete projects in a lot of divine ideas, like your one-man show. In my computer, I thought, one of those will probably be it. But no, I was guided to journal confessions for 40 days. Now, I had been a spiritual teacher for quite a while, and that was kind of like, whoa. But I went to my office, I sat there and just opened myself to the idea. And within a few minutes, I got a word: discipline. Yeah. And I had this visceral reaction because I was disciplined very harshly. And then I became my own worst disciplinarian, because pushing myself. But I sat there and journaled for an hour. It just flowed through me how discipline became direction. And first we are disciplined and we have our own experiences and have to deal with that. And then we have to internalize that and be self-disciplined. Because unless we can say no to one thing, we will never be able to say yes to something else. And we will never be able to direct our lives and choose our future that we truly want and desire. So discipline became direction. In the next day, another word, 40 days.
Hold up that book one more time.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Dance of Ego and Essence.
Yeah, so
it's beautiful.
And that was your confessions that you.
These are my confessions.
Yeah.
It is an exercise in radical honesty, and I think that by reading my experiences, that other people will be given the freedom to go there themselves. It was a deep soul cleanse, and by the time I was halfway through, I was flying. I was dancing. It was like almost euphoric, because every day I let go of more stuff, another layer of stuff from my past that was holding me down, another layer of baggage or ballast that was just keeping me from fully experiencing and expressing the truth of my being. So I would encourage everybody to participate, and join that. There's a companion journal, and there's meditation. There's a whole process, and it's holistic, because we can't change if we just read something. We have to do a variety of things to impact our whole being if we are going to shift. And today, of course, there is so much fear, and there's so many concerns. And if we can't shift out of that just by thinking about it or reading about what to do. So the approach that I bring forth is holistic. It impacts the body, heart, mind, gut, and soul. And so we integrate all those different aspects in order to truly shift our awareness and make a difference in our lives. You were going to ask me about intuitive healing. Do we have time, or do we have to go?
We'll go a few extra minutes. You talked about you told the story in your one woman show where you were at some kind of a dinner party. You mentioned that I'm an intuitive healer, and the man physically moved away from you, reacting like, oh boy, I don't want any parts of this. And you weren't necessarily thinking of yourself as an intuitive healer. If I understood it correctly, you were kind of just playing a little bit. But talk about like that, like what that did for you and how that awakened you in a new way.
Well, I had been doing intuitive healings. It evolved in harmony with the blueprint also. Mm-hmm. And of course, as being someone who is trained scientifically and a nurse, that was not something that was comfortable to me either. However, I went with it, and I started by just praying for people. And then I would tell them, what I said, because I would sense imagery and I was moving things around with my hands. And so it evolved to the point where I sit with people or I'm online with people and my body goes into motion. I become like a mirror, and your higher self telling you, showing you exactly what you need to know in this moment, or revealing certain things about issues or challenges, and how a shift in perception is often all it takes for healing to occur. And so it's hard to explain. I call it spiritual blueprinting, and I offer this as a service, but it is powerful because it comes from a higher place and you actually participate in the process. It's not you being passive and someone saying, well, this is going to happen or whatever. It's not like a psychic stuff. It is deeply spiritual. And I believe almost every issue in our lives stems from fear that is coming from belief in duality. And as soon as we shift how we view that, as soon as we realize we truly are one with all that is and one with each other, then our fears start to disappear too. So it's interesting. And I love doing that because we are one. And as you are healed, I am healed, and so is the world. It's powerful.
In 2014, I had, at the end of 2013, I had kind of 2009 started my journey, and I assembled a whole bunch of pieces. At the end of 2013, I had a breakthrough moment where the pieces, kind of like your matrix, I had all the pieces, but I didn't know how they fit together. And then I got clarity on that. And so that piece came together. And as I progressed through 2014 with this new understanding of it all, I did an exercise where I had to define what my beliefs were. And the one belief that was kind of a brand new belief for me was that we are all connected. And I've since added, there are no coincidences. We are all connected. When I wrote that, I had other beliefs. Those other beliefs were more core foundational beliefs that I really did know is the truth. But I had this knowing that we were all connected, and I put it there, but I didn't know it in the sense that I had experienced that connection. Mm-hmm. Once I put that forth, I started experiencing that connection in everything that happens. And when I look back at that list of beliefs that I have, they all feel true, but we are all connected seems like the most powerful one on that whole list of things. So
we are all connected.
Yeah. So I love that. Well, this is fun. We could keep going, but we agreed to an hour, so we'll just we'll wrap things up. What would be the last thing you'd like to share with the folks listening, either live or on the replay?
Yes. Well, I would encourage everybody to go to my website, drpamelagerali.com. And on the homepage, there's a free booklet about the blueprint that you can download so that you can get a little bit more of understanding. And also you can sign up to get my newsletters and more inspiration and information about the blueprint that can help you on your journey, because I believe that we are in this together. And as we raise our vibration and learn to live more consciously, we raise up the rest of humanity. So I would encourage you to do that.
Very good. And yes, there's the at the bottom, drpamelajorelli.com is the website. So please go and check it out and download her free overview of what the blueprint's all about. And
Yes.
boy, what a wonderful experience. So Pamela, thank you so much for joining us today. This was a good conversation. I'm sure we could pick any one topic and go spend an hour talking about it, just because we both have an interest in this consciousness. Really, it's about what do we say? It's about the human experience, right? Exactly. It's about we want a better human experience for ourselves and then for other people too.
Exactly. And if you want to watch my one woman show, on my about page, at the bottom, there's a link, and it actually starts about minute 12 where the actual show starts. So there's a lot of preliminaries, but it is the hero's journey, so to speak. It is pretty typical for everyone. It's mine specific for me, but it flows, I believe, with most of our journey into greater awareness.
Well, when you were talking about the preachers telling us what to do loud and clearly, boy, that one was ringing true in my ears. I was like, it was almost uncomfortable to hear some of it, because it's so true, and it's so fear-based. And it's something that we have since decided is not an appropriate way for us to live our lives. Right. And yet that was the foundation of what we grew up with. So right. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, very good.
All about love. Yes.
Yeah. So love is really the answer. We're going to leave it at that. Not this fear thing. That's overrated.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you so much.
Grateful to be with you.
Please come back again.
I will.
All righty. Well, thank you, Dr. Pamela Jorelli, and it's drpamelajorelli.com. So there you go. All righty. Well, this was fun. I have a show on Thursday coming up. All right. And I'm going to interview John Chapin, and we're going to talk about sales. And we're going to talk about sales in a new way, and how, like, there's certain aspects of sales that haven't changed at all. And then there's certain aspects of sales that are a little bit different based on the way our world is evolving as we all move to a higher consciousness level. So yes. And so thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Sunshine, for joining in and thanking us. We had a good time this morning. I will see everybody on Thursday for a conversation about selling and sales with John Chapin. All right. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.